You then go on to say that rather than 1619, if you really want to kind of mark a year as the beginning of the American story, you advocate for 1493. Now, most of us from our, rhymes in elementary school remember 1492 as a really important year. Why 1493 in your mind is really the one we should be focusing on?
Right. Yeah. So 1492, the year that Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Right. We have those rhymes kind of ringing in our heads. Well, it turns out that obviously that's an important date. But 1493 is the year that Columbus goes back to Spain and is actually commissioned with great fanfare, and is commissioned to return to the so-called New World with a much bigger fleet, much more, kind of bigger, more men, more animals, more equipment, the whole nine yards to kind of continue this. But more importantly than that, this created a real problem, a political problem and an opportunity. And what happened was Spain needed to know that it could rightfully claim these lands. And so who do they turn to secure that claim? Well, they turned to the church. And at that time, this is before the Protestant break from the Catholics. So there's kind of one Western Catholic church. And so they appeal to the Pope in Rome. And there is there had already been this kind of set of doctrines that were put in place beginning actually earlier with some earlier ones, but the one that's the most relevant for the Americas is in 1493, where the Pope basically divides the so-called New World between Portugal and Spain. But the key here is that it is what counts as an undiscovered land is that there are no Christians living there, right? That's the key to it, right? If there's anyone who's not Christian and no other Christian country has claimed it, then the quote-unquote discovering country has the rights to it. And the language is fairly stark. I was going to read like from one of the earlier documents here, that the language is very plain. They're giving rights to the political kings to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens or Muslims and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wherever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them. And here's the key line: and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. So this is the official word of the Western Christian Church to the Christian political leaders about really who does and doesn't deserve human rights.
So the case here, and these are a set of documents coming from the church, papal bulls and declarations ranging from 1452 up to 1493 that you're citing. Collectively, they're known as the Doctrine of Discovery. And to kind of reiterate what you just read and said, the argument is if no Christians occupy a land, then it's up for grabs by Christians. Western European white settlers can come in and claim that land, and any property, wealth, or people that live there or are found there become the property of the Europeans. And the justification for this is that Christianity, and therefore Christian cultures, are inherently superior to all the others, and any claims that those people and cultures may have don't register. It's only if Europeans are there that there's real ownership, and you can't infringe on land that other Europeans may possess, but everyone else is up for grabs.
Yeah, that's right. And what they thought, the clear assertion of what balances the scales here is that, yes, they're seizing their property, their persons, everything, the land. And what they saw as the balancing factor is that they were giving them Christianity and quote unquote civilization. Like those two words show up over and over in these documents. And that was seen to be, from the European Christian point of view, something that outweighed all of the things that they were losing. In fact, the argument was that they were actually benefiting these people by taking all of their stuff away, but by giving them Christianity and civilization.
Yeah, I want to jump ahead a little bit since you brought it up. There was a a U.S. Supreme Court case in 1823, Johnson versus McIntosh, where Chief Justice John Marshall is referencing this doctrine of discovery, which at this point is, this is 400 years later, basically. Um, and there's a land dispute between two white men over who owns a piece of property. One person had bought it, I think, from the government. The other person had acquired it from indigenous people. And in the ruling, John Marshall says the character and religion of the New World's inhabitants afforded an apology for considering them as a people over whom the superior genius of Europe might claim an ascendancy. And then goes on to say that ample compensation was made to the inhabitants of the New by bestowing on them civilization and Christianity in exchange for unlimited independence. Basically, what he's saying is, by giving Native Americans European civilization and Christianity, that was payment enough for their land. Therefore, by bringing them Christianity, we could then take possession of anything that they had because we'd paid them more than enough by blessing them with our culture and religion. Wow. I mean, this is the title of your book. This is the hidden roots of white supremacy, that white Christian Europeans are inherently superior to all other peoples, and therefore anything they do is justifiable.
It's really shocking when you take it seriously, as clearly these documents did, and really take it at face value. It's an audacious claim, right? But it's one that fuels so many things that are actually much more familiar to us, even if we're not familiar with the Doctrine of Discovery. But we are familiar with terms like manifest destiny, or America as a new Zion, a new promised land. For European Christians, like those ideas that are much closer to us, I think, are deeply rooted in this tradition and in this kind of religious and moral justification for white Christians to come in as settlers, colonists, and that lead to these horrific acts of slavery, genocide, forced removal, and it's all justified by this key church doctrine.